history, and the clock is ticking. MPs have shown that they're ready to take back control over what has been, from start to finish, a failed Brexit process. But the question facing the House tonight is whether it is worth giving this failed Prime Minister another chance to go back pleading to Brussels, another opportunity to humiliate the United Kingdom, another few weeks to waste precious time. Our answer tonight must be a resounding no. And let me remind you why. It was this Prime Minister who chose to lay down red lines that never commanded the support of Parliament. It was this Prime Minister who refused to guarantee the rights of EU nationals who've made their lives and their homes in this country. It was this Prime Minister who time and again tried to shut Parliament out, refusing to give us a meaningful vote, refusing to release the legal advice to the deal. She's treated this place and its members on all sides with utter disdain. Mr. Speaker, it was the member for Gainsborough who said the road to tyranny is paved with executives ignoring Parliament. Yet that is what she has done. And so Parliament is having to assert its rightful authority. And at every turn, she has chosen division over unity. She's not tried to bring the 17 million people that voted leave and the 16 million people that voted remain together. She should have tried to assure those who voted remain. Instead, she chose to placate the most extreme of her colleagues on the leave side of the debate. That has left the nation more divided than it was in June 2016. Out on the streets, in homes, in schools, in hospitals, people are struggling and take no hope and no strength from this ailing government. What happened to those burning injustices she said it was her mission to fight when she came into office? Racism, classism, homelessness, insecure jobs. They've all grown and burned brighter than ever before. And for so much of this, she is responsible. If the House declares its no confidence in the government tonight, it will open the possibility of a general election and a decisive change in direction for our country on Brexit, a decisive change in direction for workers, for young people and for our vital services. Mr. Speaker, the Right Honourable Lady will forever be known as the nothing has changed Prime Minister. But something must change. So our only choice left is to change her and her government in a general election. We know she's worked hard, but the truth is she's too set in her ways, too aloof to lead. She lacks the imagination and agility to bring people with her. She lacks the authority on the world stage to negotiate this deal. Ultimately, she has failed. It's not through lack of effort. It's not through lack of dedication. And I think the country recognises that effort. In fact, the country feels genuinely sorry for the Prime Minister. I feel sorry for the Prime Minister. But she cannot confuse pity for political legitimacy, sympathy for sustainable support. The evidence is clear. And I know that out of loyalty to party, members opposite will want to support the Prime Minister in the vote this evening. But everyone in this chamber, no matter which lobby they go through tonight, know in their hearts that this Prime Minister is not capable of getting a deal through. The members on the opposite benches know it. They know, we know that they know it. The country knows it, which is why we must act. That is why we need something new. That is why we need a general election. I commend this motion to the House.
Mr. Speaker, as you know, having sat throughout this entire debate, it has been a passionate debate characterised by many excellent speeches, and I commend the members for Tiverton and Honiton, Bolton West, East Surrey, Mid Norfolk, Plymouth Moor View, Broxtowe, Stirling, Dudley South, Faversham and Stoke-on-Trent South on my side for a series of outstanding speeches. Yeah. But it has also been the case, as the Shadow Secretary of State pointed out, that there have been many powerful speeches from the opposition benches as well. And I too, like him, want to pay particular tribute to the members for Warrington North, Gedling, Ilford North and Birmingham Hodge Hill for moving and passionate speeches. Their constituencies are lucky to have them as advocates for their concerns and their needs. But perhaps the bravest and the finest speech that came from the opposition benches was given by the member for Barrow in Furness. It takes courage. It takes courage, and he has it, having been elected on a Labour mandate, representing working class people, to say that the leader of the party that you joined as a boy is not fit to be Prime Minister. He speaks for his constituents. He speaks for the country. And that takes me to the speech from the Shadow Secretary of State. He spoke well. But I felt he did not rise to the level of events. But one thing that was characteristic about his speech, he did not once mention in his speech the leader of the opposition or why he should be Prime Minister. Now, he doesn't want him to be Prime Minister. I have a lot of time for the honourable member. We have several things in common. He's lost weight recently. We've both lost weight recently, I should say. Him much more so. We're both friends of Israel. Him much more so. And we both recognise that the member for Islington North is about the worst possible person to lead the Labour Party. Him much more so. Now, as well as great speeches from the backbenches, we also had some interesting speeches from the front benches. We had a speech of over 20 minutes from my great friend, the leader of the Scottish National Party in this place. But again, in those 20 minutes, he did not once mention the common fisheries policy. I think everyone in Scotland who recognises the potential to free ourselves from the common fisheries policy which Brexit provides will note that in 20 minutes of precious parliamentary time, the SNP didn't mention them, aren't interested in them, and as far as the fishing people of Scotland are concerned, the SNP have literally nothing to say. I turn to the speech from the leader of the Liberal Democrats, someone whom I also have affection and respect for, and he made a number of good points. But he also said that he regretted the referendum. This from the party that was the first in this House to say that we should have a referendum on EU membership. And because he doesn't like the result of the last referendum, he now wants another referendum. The Liberal Democrat policy on referendums is not the policy of Gladstone or Lloyd George, it's the policy of Vicky Pollard. No, but yeah, but no, but yeah. I should also commend the speech given by the leader of the Democratic Unionist Party. He explained that he had been inundated with text messages today from people who were saying, please, 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 people in this House, please, please, please back the government tonight. And some of those text messages had even come from Conservatives. And I think, critically, when we think about confidence in this country and in this government, there is a daily vote of confidence which is being executed by the individuals investing in this country, creating jobs and opportunity for all our citizens. Under this government, this country remains the most successful country for foreign direct investment of any country in Europe, with more than £1.3 billion being invested in the last year. That is why Forbes magazine says that this country is the best destination for new jobs in the world. It's why the independent organisation JLL say the best place for the future of services in the world is here in the United Kingdom. It is why once again London has been recorded by independent inspectors as the best place in the world for tech investment. And we see that when Spanish rail firms like Talgo shortlist 6 destinations for investment for new rolling stock, all 6 in the United Kingdom. When Boeing opened a new factory in Sheffield to create jobs for British workers. When Chanel moved from France to London in order to establish a new corporate headquarters.
Smells good.
And when Starbucks moved from Amsterdam to London in order to ensure more investment and jobs. The opposition should wake up and smell the coffee. And all of this, in the words of the BBC, despite Brexit. Now that investment, those jobs that have been created under my right honourable friend the Prime Minister's inspirational leadership, has been invested in public services and social justice. As we heard from the member for Dudley South and Bexhill in Battle, 1.9 million more children in good and outstanding schools. It is also the case that the gap between the poorest and the richest in our schools has narrowed under this Conservative government. We also have a record level of investment in the NHS, and thanks to my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Health, a 10-year plan, £20 billion investment, £394 million extra every week for our NHS. And we also have investment in our national security. We meet the 2% target for investment in NATO, and we have 2 new aircraft carriers capable of projecting British force and influence across the world in defence of freedom and democracy. And in contrast, while we are standing up for national security, what about the right honourable gentleman, the member for Islington North? He wants to leave NATO. He wants to get rid of our nuclear deterrent. And recently in a speech he said, why do countries boast about the size of their armies? That is quite wrong. Why don't we emulate Costa Rica that has no army at all? No allies, no deterrent, no army. No way can this country ever allow that man to be our Prime Minister and in charge of our national security. But if he can't support our fighting men and women, no. Who does he support? Who does he stand beside? Well, it was fascinating to discover that the right honourable gentleman, the Leader of the Opposition, was there when a wreath was laid. A wreath was laid to commemorate those who were involved in the massacre at the Munich Olympics of Israeli athletes.
Never apologise.
Now, he says he was present but not involved. Present but not involved sums him up when it comes to national security. When this House voted to bomb the fascists of ISIS after an inspirational speech by the member for Leeds Central, in which 66 people, including the Shadow Secretary of State, voted with this government in order to defeat fascism, I'm afraid that the honourable gentleman, the Leader of the Opposition, was not with us. In fighting fascism, he was present but not involved. And similarly, when this House voted to take the action necessary, when Vladimir Putin executed an act of terrorism on our soil, there were many Labour members, many good Labour members, who stood up to support what we were doing, but not the right honourable gentleman when we were fighting.
Point of order, Daniel Rennie. If it is a genuine point of order.
The government, how is this relevant, and is this not dangerous?
If the Secretary of State were out of order, I'd have said so. I didn't, because he isn't. Secretary of State.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And if the Leader of the Opposition won't stand up against Putin when he attacks people in this country, if he won't stand up against fascists when they are running riot in Syria, if he will not stand up for this country when critical national security questions are being asked, how can we possibly expect him to stand up for us in European negotiations? Will he stand up for us against Spain over Gibraltar? Will he stand up against the Commission in order to ensure that we get a good deal? Of course he won't, because he won't even stand up for his own members of Parliament. Why is it that a Labour Member of Parliament needs armed protection at her own party conference? Why is it that nearly half of female Labour MPs wrote to the Leader of the Opposition to say that he was not standing up against the vilification and the abuse that they received online, which was being carried out in his name? If he cannot protect his own Members of Parliament, if he cannot protect the proud traditions of the Labour Party, how can he possibly protect this country? We cannot have confidence in him to lead. We have confidence in this government, which is why I commend this motion.
Order! Under the order of the House! Under the order of the House of today, I am now required to put the question. The question is that this House has no confidence in Her Majesty's government. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. No. Division! Clear the lobby! Order. The question is that this House has no confidence in Her Majesty's government. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. No. Tellers for the ayes, Jessica Morden and Jeff Smith. Tellers for the noes, Julian Smith and Christopher Pincher. the doors!
The ayes to the right, 306. The noes to the left, 325.
The ayes to the right, 306. The noes to the left, 325. So the noes have it. The noes have it. Unlock. Point of order, the Prime Minister.
On a point of order, Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased that this House has expressed its confidence in the government tonight. I do not take this responsibility lightly, and my government will continue its work to increase our prosperity, guarantee our security, and to strengthen our union. And yes, we will also continue to work to deliver on the solemn promise we made to the people of this country to deliver on the result of the referendum and leave the European Union. I believe this duty is shared by every member of this House, and we have a responsibility to identify a way forward that can secure the backing of the House. To that end, I've proposed a series of meetings between senior parliamentarians and representatives of the government over the coming days, and I would like to invite the leaders of parliamentary parties to meet with me individually, and I would like to start these meetings tonight. Mr. Speaker, the government approaches these meetings in a constructive spirit, and I urge others to do the same. But we must find solutions that are negotiable and command sufficient support in this House. And, as I've said, we will return to the House on Monday to table an amendable motion and to make a statement about the way forward. The House has put its confidence in this government. I stand ready to work with any member of this House to deliver on Brexit and ensure that this House retains the confidence of the British people.
Point of order, Mr. Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last night the House rejected the government's conclusion of its negotiations with the European...
Order. I called the Prime Minister on a point of order, and the Prime Minister was heard. And she was heard in relative tranquility and certainly with courtesy. And the same courtesy will be extended to the Leader of the Opposition and to others who seek to raise points of order. That's the way it is. Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last night, the House rejected the government's deal, emphatically. A week ago, the House voted to condemn the idea of a no-deal Brexit. Before there can be any positive discussions about the way forward, the government must remove clearly, once and for all, the prospect of the catastrophe of a no-deal Brexit from the EU and all the chaos that would come as a result of that. And I invite the Prime Minister to confirm now that the government will not countenance a no-deal Brexit from the European Union.
A point of order, Mr. Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I must say that I welcome the offer of talks from the Prime Minister. I think it's important, Mr. Speaker, that all of us recognise the responsibility that we have, and on the back of the defeat of the government's motion last night, that we have to work together where we can to find a way forward. I commit the Scottish National Party to working constructively with the government. However, I do think it's important. I do think it is important in that regard that we make it clear to the Prime Minister, in the spirit of openness in these talks, that the issue of extending Article 50 of a people's vote and avoiding a no deal have to be on the table. We have to agree to enter these talks on the basis that we can move forward and achieve a result which will unify all the nations of the United Kingdom.
Thank you. Point of order, Sir Edward Davey, and then I'll come to the right honourable gentleman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From the Liberal Democrat position, we are clear that we want to engage with talks with Her Majesty's government, but it's very important that the government makes clear that no deal is not an option. It's very, very important that the Prime Minister, as she actually, to be fair to her, earlier today didn't do, rule out extending Article 50. It's important that the House has that chance to think and come together. And finally, I would ask the Prime Minister, will she ensure, Mr. Speaker, that this House gets a chance to take control of our own business as we go through the next few days and weeks?
Thank you. Point of order, Mr. Nigel Dodds.
Mr. Speaker, and the result of the motion of no confidence tonight illustrates the importance of the confidence and supply arrangement that is currently in place between. I'm always delighted when our opponents illustrate the strength of that relationship that we have and what it's delivering for Northern Ireland. And when the people of Northern Ireland see that investment in education and health and infrastructure, they will thank this Parliament and they will thank this party and this government for that extra investment. But can I say this? Can I say this?
Order, Mr. Stone. Normally, order. Very unseemly behaviour. Normally you behave with great dignity in this place. Calm yourself, man. Get a grip. Nigel Dodds.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Can I say, however, that the confidence and supply arrangement, of course, is built upon delivering Brexit on the basis of our shared priorities. And for us, that is the Union. And we want to deliver Brexit, taking back control of our laws, our border and our money, and we leave the European Union as one country. Let us work in the coming days to achieve that objective.
Well, on ground, well, if the right honourable gentleman really feels he must. But he has been represented by his right honourable friend. But if he really wants to, briefly, I don't mind. But we really must be. No. Well, the generosity of spirit. Mr. Alistair Carmichael.
For her assurance, Mr. Speaker, that the motion that will be brought on Monday will be amendable. And can I seek your guidance about how we, on this side of the House, and indeed on that side of the House as well, who want to see this matter put to a people's vote, might on Monday be given the opportunity to do so, including the opportunity given to the Leader of the Opposition, now that we know there is not to be a general election?
Response to the right honourable gentleman, apart from thanking him for his point of order, is to say that if there is an amendable motion of which the Prime Minister on behalf of the government has given notice, manifestly there will be an opportunity for people to table amendments, and we shall have then to see what happens. The right honourable gentleman wouldn't expect me to make a commitment in advance, but I know what he thinks and I've heard what he said. We come now to the adjournment. The whip to move.
I beg to move this House to now adjourn.
Thank you. The question is that this House do now adjourn. Honourable members do not wish to hear the honourable gentleman, the member for Solihull, dilate on the matter of car production in Solihull, which seems an unaccountable choice on their part. I hope that they will leave the chamber quickly and quietly so that the occupant of the chair can hear the honourable gentleman deliver his oration. Thank you.
He must have been. What that makes one of us. Yeah. Did you want him to be? That's no problem. So I'll
We come now to the adjournment, when I can divert the whip from the attention of his honourable friend, the member for Mid-Bedfordshire, who's whispering into his ear, no doubt extremely meaningfully. But if I can just distract him for a moment. We come now to the adjournment. The whip to move.
Well, back to move. This House do now adjourn.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. Mr. Julian Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And we move finally on to the main business of the day. And it is obviously it's a great pleasure to have followed the Secretary of State for DEFRA, and I'm sure that this speech will be as resounding as that one. It's not a hard act to follow, after all, is it? I have to give that fantastic oration. The reason for this debate, and I secured it prior to the announcements of job reductions at Jaguar Land Rover in the West Midlands. I got the beforehand, but we've seen a slow trend over time, unfortunately, over the last year, of a drip of job losses in the Jaguar Land Rover group. And the announcements that have just been made were much more substantial in that regard, and has brought forward the Jaguar Land Rover Development Partnership, which I'm sure all honourable members, and I know my right honourable friend, the member for Meriden, is playing a leading part in that, and also in the work in this House in terms of promoting the needs of the UK car industry and Jaguar Land Rover in particular. I'm sure all honourable members, and also the member for Coventry South, will join me in wishing that organisation a great success.
Hear, hear.
Now, I believe that in order to take the right action to support the British car industry and the towns and families that depend on it, politicians must have an accurate understanding of the real drivers behind the current challenges and not allow this issue to get caught up in arguments over, for example, Brexit. I therefore want to use my speech to set out why Jaguar Land Rover is so important to Solihull and the wider West Midlands economy, and the real reasons behind their current difficulties, and set out my recommendations for what ministers can do to support this crucial industry. Solihull is rightly proud of the fact that it is one of the UK's great manufacturing towns. Not only is it home to some of the country's most popular global brands, but as I said in the House just the other day, it is one of only a few constituencies to enjoy an actual trade surplus in goods with the European Union. As a consequence, thousands of local residents are employed in these industries, including the JLR plant at Lode Lane, and they have played a big role in shaping the character shape of our town. I'm delighted to give way to the gentleman.
Yeah, and first of all, congratulate him on bringing this forward and understand the reasons for it, and it's good to see the members who have a particular interest in that to be here in the House as well. Similar to us in Northern Ireland when it comes to the Bombardier issue, does the honourable member agree that consideration must be given to bringing back work from foreign plants, such an example such as Slovakia in the case of Land Rover, and keeping jobs here in the United Kingdom, similar as he should be doing in Bombardier? And does he think a government should look at the incentives to encourage the retention of jobs here within the big manufacturing base in the United Kingdom?
I thank the honourable gentleman for making the intervention, and I think the way in which you keep jobs and actually bring jobs into the UK is by creating the business environment for them to flourish and investment to flourish, and that is basically the point of the speech that I'm going to make. I will give one.
Gentleman for giving way, and I congratulate him on securing this timely debate. He's quite right. There's not a lot can be said about meetings that we've had with Jaguar Land Rover, because that information is confidential. But Jaguar Land Rover is not in the same situation as Bombardier. It's a totally different situation, quite frankly. And what we certainly would want to do is support the honourable gentleman, as he knows, and to make sure that Jaguar Land Rover goes on and creates more jobs. And I'm sure he might want to touch on the supply line, because I've had a number of letters from small companies a bit concerned about it, but we've had some reassurances on that, and there'll be discussions about that anyway. So, all the best to the honourable gentleman.
Honourable gentleman for his intervention. And actually, I wonder whether he's actually seen my speech, actually, because I'm just about to mention the actual successes of the Jaguar Land Rover, which are manifest over this time. And actually, when you think in terms of employment, and we just talked about that, I talked about that at the start of this particular speech, the realities are that we have gone back to the situation we were in 2016.
I congratulate my honourable friend on securing this important debate tonight. And just want to say, I have a feeling I know what he's going to say, and that he has in what he says huge and strong support from my constituents in the royal town of Sutton Coldfield for the critical importance that Jaguar Land Rover plays in our region.
Intervention. I know for a fact there are a lot of people who work at Jaguar Land Rover that live in his constituency, and I always see the royal town of Sutton Coldfield effectively as very close partners with Solihull in many things and many respects. And I do welcome and thank him for his comment. JLR does face serious challenges, but I think it's important not to allow these to eclipse what is still a very encouraging overall picture. In 2010, they employed just 12,000 people in the UK, whereas even after the latest reductions, they will still employ over 38,000 workers across the country, including 10,000 in Solihull. That's more than a threefold increase nationwide. Those 8 years have also seen substantial revenue growth, from 6 billion to 25 billion per year, a more than fourfold increase. Over the past 5 years, JLR has invested some £80 billion in the UK, which is basically the same as defence and education put together. That is an enormous investment. They further announced a fresh round of investment alongside the job news last week. Overall, the UK continues to enjoy the most productive automotive manufacturing sector in Europe, and productivity remains about 50% higher than the British manufacturing average. In short, Solihull remains a great place for British manufacturers and exporters, and I'll do everything I can to help them succeed as part of the new Jaguar Land Rover Development Partnership. I also think that we must be careful the details of this important issue aren't confused or obscured. There is no doubt that our relationship with the European Union is a matter of serious concern to JLR and every other manufacturer who depends on international just-in-time supply chains. But JLR management have been quite clear that the driving forces behind the current reductions are twofold: a serious fall in demand in China and a slump in demand for diesel cars in the aftermath of the Volkswagen emissions scandal. Exposure to downturns in foreign markets is part and parcel of being an exporter, but the second is the fallout from the Volkswagen emissions scandal, a problem made in Wolfsburg but now threatening jobs and investment in the UK. For years, governments of both parties have encouraged Britons to buy diesel and, by extension, encouraged British car makers to surface that need. According to Professor David Bailey of Aston Business School, more than 90% of JLR's domestic sales are diesels. Yet after Volkswagen were found to have been fiddling with their emission scores, we have suddenly seen a scramble to seem to crack down on diesel. This has had the predictable results. So far this year, Jaguar sales have been down 26%, but this pattern is repeated across the UK car industry, where overall diesel registrations have plunged by a third since January to March 2017. Respected economists from the Centre for Economic and Business Research have shown that such policies are hugely detrimental to the economy. Many of these policies also fail to account for the huge differences between old-fashioned diesel engines and so-called, if you like, cleaner diesel, alternatives to the sort manufactured by Jaguar Land Rover in my constituency. These cars are just as clean as petrol alternatives. In fact, What Car magazine recently named a diesel their car of the year, saying that not only that it combined the low CO2 diesels are known for, but with lower NOx output than many petrol alternatives. Even better, and this is perverse in many respects. The fact is, so many people are now switching to petrol without realising they could be actually buying a more polluting vehicle than the diesel they could actually buy at the same time, perhaps at a good discount. I will give way to my round friend.
And very briefly, and well done for securing this debate. He's doing a great job trying to rehabilitate the truth about new diesel engines and help to justify the huge investment that not only the company but also the government has made in developing new cleaner diesel engines, and hopefully this debate can help disabuse the myth about the difference between petrol and diesel.
I thank my right honourable friend. Now, I actually have been very recently diagnosed as an asthmatic, and it's quite a for someone who cycled up Mount Volunteer lesson 2 years ago, it's rather sort of it is quite a frightening and life sort of altering experience in many respects. But so I'm very, very conscious of that fact. But we need to get it right, and we need to understand that we don't end up, for example, ensuring that older polluting diesels are kept on the roads for longer, because people are afraid to change them because they will lose money. We need to encourage people to transition to new technologies, but at the same time we need to fill that gap with cleaner diesel until we get there, until the capacity is there. I'll give way to and then I'll give way to you.
Can I thank the member for Solihull for bringing in this important debate before us this evening? It is an important and timely one, as he was saying. And having worked with him and colleagues on the issue of the automotive industry in Jaguar Land Rover, I know he shares the same passion that I have. Just on that point, I wanted to pick up that he, I think, is in agreement with me that the transition that he describes is so critical in how we manage that and how government works with manufacturers to ensure that we do get a coordinated, managed transition away from diesel and petrol to cleaner fuels. And perhaps he could speak now about the diesel taxation and how we need to actually not penalise consumers, but actually support consumers in that transition. And particularly that will help Jaguar Land Rover.
Honourable Friend to put his thoughts on that on the record in that respect. And he is correct in terms of transition. And the realities are that we can't have a situation, frankly, where we ask car manufacturers to move at pace to these new technologies, and then, frankly, we take policy across the EU which potentially can damage their income streams, which would then allow them in order basically to invest. So we need to be nuanced about this and thoughtful, while at the same time ensuring our environment.
I'm most grateful for giving way, and he's making some excellent points. Jaguar Land Rover invested a huge amount of money in South Staffordshire on the border with Wolverhampton in the engine plant precisely to build these engines that he's referring to, and that has brought huge numbers of excellent job opportunities both in Wolverhampton and Staffordshire. So would he pay tribute? Well, I would join me in paying tribute to that foresight that they had in these clean engines.
I certainly do. I know the impact that's had in his local community and also in the wider West Midlands economy. I mean, these jobs are fantastic jobs. They pay higher, much higher than the national average wage, and that creates jobs in the local economy through the multiplier effect. These are jobs we have to keep and we have to develop. So I'd say the key word there is transition. Whilst JLR have... I'm conscious of time, sorry. Announced that all new models will be electrified from 2020, and I no doubt other manufacturers will follow suit. It is a simple fact that we do not yet have the infrastructure to handle a wholesale shift towards electric vehicles in the near future. As I told the House during the debate on what is now the Automated and Electrical Vehicles Act, the current capacity for public charging points doesn't even come close to that provided by traditional filling stations. It will take time to put the necessary infrastructure in place, and until it's ready, our environmental goals are best served by encouraging motorists to switch to cleaner, modern vehicles of all types as we get to this situation where we can get rid of the internal combustion engine by 2040. As an MP for a car-making town and former chairman of the all-party parliamentary group for fairer fuel and motorists, I am of course very grateful for the government's proactive approach to the sector. The previously mentioned sector deal is very welcome, and I'm proud to have the opportunity to serve on the new JLR Development Partnership, which will give the company, firms in their supply chain, trade union officials and others the opportunity to liaise directly with the Business Secretary, the Mayor of the West Midlands and other local politicians. I also note the £500 million investment in the new Advanced Propulsion Centre, intended to research, develop and industrialise new low-carbon automotive technologies, and other initiatives such as the Faraday Battery Challenge and the Supplier Competitiveness and Productivity Programme. The car industry has proven itself more than willing to collaborate with ministers in this field, match funding not just the Advanced Propulsion Centre, but also another £225 million for R&D investment. Now, I'll bring my comments to a conclusion. We face a period of economic uncertainty, especially for exporters, as we negotiate our future relationship with the European Union and start to pursue our own independent trade policy. It is vitally important, both to the well-being of constituents like mine and to the entire British economy, not to mention the government's own long-term environmental and technological ambitions, that we do everything we can to offer stability and certainty to companies such as Jaguar Land Rover. Only then will they be able to make the investment needed to protect jobs, drive growth and make our eventual transition to electric cars a reality.
Minister, Mr. Richard Harrington.
Madam Deputy Speaker, thank you very much, and I'd like to congratulate my honourable friend for securing this debate tonight. Although I must confess, Madam Deputy Speaker, I was a little disappointed because when I came into the chamber, I thought so many people had come to listen to the debate tonight. And I thought, well, maybe it's because of Jaguar. I mean, Jaguars are known as super toys by many people. Members may aspire to owning them. I can strongly recommend them. And I know that for I have a little, perhaps, indication that Madam Deputy Speaker may have a product that's manufactured by this company. So, if representatives from the company are listening, we do have the endorsement of the Deputy Speaker. And indeed myself, I have to say. They're not at the taxpayer's expense, I may say. And it's not really a super toy, it's a more modest model. But seriously, it's a very important subject tonight, and I'd like to also thank other members that have, and right honourable members that have contributed. Jaguar Land Rover has an excellent group of MPs that are in the area. I was very pleased to meet with them last week to discuss the announcement that was made. I see the honourable gentleman from Leamington and Warwick, or Warrington and Leamington, shaking his head. I do hope that I haven't affronted him by not, but it was, most members were, and if I have, I really apologise, and I'd make sure he was always invited.
I thank the Minister for giving way. I don't believe I was invited, but I very much hope that I will be invited in future. Thank you.
He wasn't. It was all done at the last minute, and I would apologise to him and offer to meet him whenever he likes, either informally or indeed for a meeting with officials. But the point I was making is that it's a cross-party matter with Jaguar Land Rover, and it's treated in that way by government and by the company. I just wish to briefly outline in the time we have the steps that the government's taken since Jaguar Land Rover announced last Thursday that they will reduce their global workforce by about 4,500 people. And then I'll move on to address the other arguments put forward by my honourable friend. As he has highlighted, the UK automotive industry remains one of our great success stories. Global demand for our designed, engineered, manufactured vehicles is strong and regarded internationally as being very productive. Our industrial strategy builds on these strengths and invests in the future to put the UK at the forefront of the next generation of electric and autonomous vehicles. And Jaguar Land Rover are a key part of our automotive manufacturing base, supporting high-quality jobs both directly and across the supply chain. As the member for Solihull noted, last Thursday, Jaguar Land Rover confirmed that they're offering voluntary redundancy packages to the UK workforce to reduce the headcount. And as it's a voluntary redundancy programme, they can't give any figures on the number of Solihull workers that might be affected. But they made it clear to us in a call that the Secretary of State, my right honourable friend Secretary of State, had with myself with the Chief Executive of Jaguar Land Rover just before the announcement, that those working on production lines are not part of this programme, and it's predominantly marketing and management staff, which I don't make lightly of. These are people who will be made redundant, hopefully with their agreement, and really what job they do doesn't particularly matter. But he also stressed to us that the apprenticeship programme, which has been supported so well by my honourable friend from Solihull and other local MPs, will continue, as will graduate recruitment and the recruitment of specific staff that they need. The decision to offer these redundancies, Madam Deputy Speaker, is the next phase of the £2.5 billion Charge and Accelerate turnaround programme, which the company announced last September. I've spoken, as I say, several times to the Chief Executive, and he's explained how these redundancies will streamline the business and to help ensure the company's long-term health for the future. But as I say, I do think a lot of every single member of staff and their families who face an uncertain time. And I can assure the House that we're working very closely with colleagues across the West Midlands to offer what support we absolutely can. And we are working to support the company itself. We have a long-standing relationship with the firm and its parent company in India. And since they announced the turnaround plans last September, we've worked even more closely with the company, with supporting its long-term strategies that invests in transitions to autonomous, connected and electric vehicles. On Monday, Andy Street... Of course,
Minister, giving way. One of the important factors here is the development of the electric vehicles actually takes place at Whitley and Coventry. That's the first thing I would say. Has the Minister, and I don't know this, and the Minister will want to think about this, would a scrappage scheme help the situation. I don't know, it's something that would have to be put to the company, but it struck me as something maybe we should think about and explore in order to help the company. And of course, as my honourable friend from Lymington said, there's this issue about taxation as well. And lastly, and important when we talk about the labour force, is we've got to remember a lot of the labour force actually bought houses, certainly in my constituents and other constituencies. So again, we've got to do as much as possible to help them if they've run into some difficult situations there with mortgages, for example.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his intervention on that, and he was at the meeting that we had last week, and I know he's, like all other honourable members, spends a lot of time with Jaguar. If I could briefly go through his points, I must confess, Madam Deputy Speaker, I've not thought about the scrappage scheme, but happy to do now, as is suggested. As far as the taxation matter and everything, and the electric vehicles, perhaps I could come on to that in my speech, which I will do so. But I was just confirming that Andy Street, who's the Mayor of the West Midlands Combined Authority, and Secretary of State convened the Jaguar Land Rover Development Partnership, which brought the company local MPs, including my honourable friend, the member for Solihull, and I must congratulate him and thank him for coming to that at short notice. Although again, other local MPs were invited, and I hope that the honourable gentleman wasn't missed out, that I might have missed out from my meeting, to be there. The reason I wasn't there, Madam Deputy Speaker, just for the record, is in case there was an urgent question here on the subject, that somebody had to be here to deal with it. So I don't know if I drew the short straw or the long straw, but I do intend in future, this is part of my responsibilities, which I look forward to taking up. But there were trade union representatives and trade bodies and other, local government, and I think almost anyone that could be invited that we felt was relevant. But it's a continuing group, and the partnership heard from the Chief Executive, Ralph Smith, on the significant investment that Jaguar Land Rover continue to make in the UK. He gave many examples of how Jaguar Land Rover is investing in the future, including in Solihull. And accepting the point that the honourable gentleman just made about working families across the UK, actually, not just in his Coventry constituency, but across the UK, where people's lives, he certainly did make that point, whose lives are involved. Because, as my honourable friend from Solihull mentioned, these are not just jobs. They're well-paid, highly skilled, well-respected jobs, and long should they continue. But Jaguar Land Rover seemed very positive about the future. I met with Steve Turner, one of the trade union representatives, last week, and I have to say, without betraying Steve's confidences, I asked him the question. I said, what's the management really like? Because I've dealt with the chief executive, and he says, absolutely very good. And I believe that, and everyone involved, I think, has confirmed that. So I'm confident for the future. Now, of the specific points, the Jaguar has confirmed that the next generation electric drive units will be produced at the company's engineering manufacturing centre in Wolverhampton from later this year. These are powered by batteries assembled at a new JLR battery centre located at Hams Hall in Birmingham, which at least we can clearly say reinforces the company's commitment to the West Midlands. Over the past year, they've announced investment in their key plants in Solihull and Halewood to produce the next generation of models, including electric vehicles. For Solihull in particular, in June 2018, the company announced hundreds of millions of pounds of investment in a technology upgrade to accommodate the next generation of flagship Land Rover models. Hopefully, and it's certainly the intentions to future-proof the site. We are determined to ensure the UK continues to be one of the most competitive locations in the world for automotive and other advanced manufacturing. The automotive sector deal, mentioned by my honourable friend from Solihull, published just over a year ago, the government's working with industry to invest in the future, including a £1 billion commitment over 10 years through the Advanced Propulsion Centre, which is very impressive. I must say the Propulsion Centre really is. And Jaguar Land Rover has benefited from this support, most recently as part of a £4.4 million project through the Advanced Propulsion Centre and an £11.2 million one through the Connected and Autonomous Vehicles Intelligent Mobility Fund. I would like to now turn to other arguments made by my honourable friend. As he rightly points out, whilst Jaguar Land Rover has had great successes over the past decade, the number of challenges facing the company is significant. Falling changes in China has been a major factor and has had an impact on many global automotive companies. In addition, the broad trend of declining consumer demand for diesel has had an impact. I make no apology for the government's bold vision on ultra-low emissions vehicles, which we set out in our Road to Zero strategy, and I'm sure Jaguar actually in the long run will be a major beneficiary of that strategy, as of course will be the environment of this country, Europe, and I hope the world. But we want to be at the forefront of this, and our aim is for new cars and vans to be effectively zero emission by 2040. That's new ones, and hopefully by 2050 and beyond, every car will be. But I agree with the critical point made by my honourable friend. Diesel plays an important role in reducing CO2 emissions from road transport during the transition, and it will continue to have an important role for years to come. And we need to be clear on this point, both in our own minds and in our communication with industry. And I believe we have been, because the Road to Zero strategy actually is clear that diesel, particularly the new generation of diesel engines, are a perfectly acceptable choice environmentally and economically. For those members who are not familiar with this document, I suggest they could look at it, because there's been a lot of talk of government playing a role in actually destroying diesel and talking it down. But
I'm really encouraged by what he said in that regard. I mean, the realities are that the collapse in diesel is a European-wide issue. We know that. It's just that we do need this nuance, this idea effectively that cleaner diesel does play a role, sort of shout a bit from the rooftops, provided that the industry can show that this clean diesel does not harm the environment.
Thank you. I don't have it within my power, Madam Deputy Speaker, to shout from the rooftops, but I will shout from this chamber for those people that are listening. The new clean diesels are really, really good. And I confess, as I say, to having a penchant for this particular kind of vehicle myself. Yes.
And if I may, thank you for the Minister for being so generous with his time. But if I can just return to this important point, when he's starting to speak about shouting from the rooftops, perhaps the most critical point to shout on is about taxation. And I do appreciate the points that have just been made by the member for Solihull, that there is a global issue, as we've seen in North America and across Europe, on diesel. But it is in our gift, the government's gift, to change taxation and not to penalise, because the maximum VED addition that was put in was £560 on a vehicle.
I'm bursting to respond to the honourable gentleman's point, but I've got precisely, I think, 2 minutes, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I don't